Entre los proyectos tal vez más arriesgados y extraños que hizo Nicolas Cage, Mandy es sin dudas uno de ellos, y pude hablar con su director de fotografía, con Benjamin Loeb, que está de acuerdo con que si no era con un actor como este que quizás está predispuesto, tiene ganas de hacer papeles más arriesgados, quizás el papel y la película nunca hubiesen llegado a ningún puerto. Hablamos sobre cuáles fueron las principales influencias y cómo fue construir estéticamente este peliculón llamado Mandy, que desde que lo vi, que no puedo olvidármelo, con una secuencia alucinante con motosierras de la que también hablamos todo en este informe sobre Mandy.
Knowing Panos, I knew that it would be a special experience.
Yeah.
I truly pick my projects based on who's directing it and where the vision comes from and sort of intentions and again, what that sort of gives me as an opportunity to learn something new or do something that I haven't done. So I sort of knew right off the bat, if Panos wants me to shoot it, then I'll shoot it.
His fist closed around the serpent's eye.
Panos had a list of, I think, 10 or 12 movies that he was very heavily referencing. And they were, quite specific. He had a list that, he'd sent me The Hitcher, and he'd say, The Night at the Motel and the Truck Stop, or Days of Thunder, Lenses, Glass, Filters, and Framing, Revenge, Daytime Exteriors, After Dark, My Sweet, Day Interiors, Psycho 3, General Sweatiness, Night Interiors towards the end. So it was a very specific list and I obviously watched through those films and sort of saw where this inspiration comes from. Also, Cobra was on there, which his father, George Cosmatos, directed. So, in many ways for Panos, this was an homage to that era of filmmaking.
I need you to get me that girl I saw. You know what to do.
It was important to him that it wasn't something that was necessarily motivated by naturalism and motivated by what was, real or there, but for him to make something that was almost like an abstract interpretation of this feeling of rage and grief. So we kind of went into it experimenting a lot with filters and experimenting with colors, and we did a number of tests with Cage and sort of found building blocks that Panos really connected with and became sort of our the beginning of what our language would develop into. And I'd gotten all of the color filters that Panavision could provide me. And I had this one red filter that we tested and I think we both just really liked, and it felt, not normal and not real, but it felt like it had an emotion that this film, could use. And I'll say, like, I really do think that going into the film knowing that Jóhann Jóhannsson would provide the score, and also having a reference library of music of what Panos had sent him and had been talking to him about, I sort of knew, the general direction of where this would lean. And again, he'd sent me a massive reference library of photographs and paintings and things that sort of were in this, not in that vein specifically, but gave us a starting point for the conversation at least. Generally, I feel like Cage is probably crazy and open enough to read the script like this and be like, okay, I'm going to do that now. I feel like most people would pass and kind of, if you read the script, you're kind of like, okay, I get it, but you have to sort of read it knowing that Panos is behind it and knowing where the visuals and the inspiration comes from and where his sort of, I guess, where his like language palette, like what his visual palette is. So I feel like he brought with him sort of, an openness to do whatever. And again, anything that Panos threw out and production threw out at Cage, he would be like, okay, you want me to do this? Cool. Okay. This is fine. We'll do this today.
So what you gonna do with that then? I'm going hunting. So what you hunting? It's crazy evil.
He went into everything, with 100%. He would, if he wanted him to go crazy, he would go crazy. And I feel like there would be a lot of reservations for actors, especially with that stature, to do something that is that weird. Because I feel like you can go into this film really not knowing what, who Panos is or what Panos is about and what his films really represent, and be like, wait, how is this going to work? And I could feel this on set. Like, obviously it's something that's very hard to translate and explain and communicate to a crew, is like, who is Panos and where does his visual inspiration come from, and what does he want to make? So I could tell that it took the crew especially a long time to understand, you know, oh, why are we lighting this in red? Like, this makes no sense. And why are we doing this shot like this? So, you know, a lot of things were, it took longer for people to catch on.
What about that amazing chainsaw scene? How was shooting that? What can you tell me about that day?
It was tricky because, you know, the film was financed by a bond company, and they had originally said that they wanted us to shoot all of the complicated scenes in the first week. So it was very early on in the production, and, you know, I always find it hard in narrative, especially features, where you're asked to go into a story for, you know, 6 weeks of shooting, and on day 1 and 2 and 3 you're shooting something that is, you know, 60 pages into the script. So it was difficult to go into something that is sort of that established in the film and is so important. We also had a stunt choreographer who, you know, obviously had a pretty specific idea of how certain things, you know, had to be done. And I think it was, you know, on me and Panos to sort of try and, as much as possible, break it out of recipe and make something that, you know, still felt in the vein of Panos. You know, we had, number one, no time to shoot anything. I think like that scene probably was shot over one day or one night. And because it was shot over the summer in Belgium, our nights were like 7.5 hours at most. So for those scenes, I think we had 2 cameras, and we set it up in a very specific way where we didn't necessarily need a ton of coverage, but it was very straightforward. I don't know if this is representable to what Panos was thinking, but, you know, when you watch something like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, where everything is kind of in a 2D plane and it's very simple, it felt like it was approached in a way that was as simple as that.
Yeah.
But for me, you know, for me, it was all the mundane stuff, all the normal things of them watching TV, and, you know, we shot a scene of them cooking sausages in the kitchen, like, which didn't make it into the film, but those scenes to me felt more inspiring, just because it was, you know, in such a crazy and weird setup, these humans are doing something that is so normal and mundane.